I'm super excited today because today we have the set 10 patch notes, patch 13.23. We're going to be going over all the new changes that are going to be released in this patch. They have a couple of balance changes from the PBE. Set 10 brings forth a bunch of new traits, units, cosmetics, and game mechanics, and a lot of them are important because they're going to be changing a lot of what we've been doing in the past if you're a returning TFT player. If you are a new player, I will be releasing a beginner guide in the next couple of days, so definitely stay tuned for that if you've never played TFT before. But for all the returning players, let's go into all the new things that have kind of been going on behind the scenes. So the new name of the set is called Remix Rumble. They have a nice little cinematic that y'all can check out. And they're also changing summoner names to Riot IDs. Nothing too important so far, but the next one gets a little more interesting. Remix Rumble Cosmetics. So this new set is all about looking different. It's a remix after all, right? So everything is going to be much more colorful than it was before, believe it or not. So we have a couple of new arenas, KDA Practice Room, Neon Stage, a bunch of new Little Legends, Superfan Sprite, Emo Chonk, Pentakill Aoshin, and DJ Gloop, bunch of new emotes, and we have a couple of new booms. Booms are probably my favorite part. I'm kind of using like a relatively old one right now, but everything is pretty much music themed right now. So this is what some of the new stuff looks like. We have Set looking pretty solid. The best one might be, I think, one of the new arenas, but I would expect most of these items to be similarly priced to what they had before. I'm sure they go into that down here as well. So you could get the battle pass, get a bunch of stuff, or just buy them directly, I think. But only do it if you want to do it, you know? But now onto the rank rewards. So rank rewards are what they give at the end of every single set. And there are a couple of big changes because you know how there were half sets before, like 9.5, set 8.5, set 7.5. I can count on forever, right? I'm a TFT player after all. But now we're only going to go by whole numbers. So you don't need to know what a decimal is anymore. I don't even remember when I learned them. Maybe it was back in like 3rd grade or something like that. Instead of a new set every 3 months, including the half set, so have 3 months of set 9, 3 months of 9.5, we're changing that to 4 months of one set with no half set. I think that's a big improvement because the 0.5s are getting a little old for me. I don't know about you all, but for me, they're getting a tiny bit old. So they're moving on into the 3 sets a year, which I love a lot. So next up we have is ranking system. So they added Emerald. Not too big of a change there. They added it in League of Legends, but Emerald, all it really means is I'm going to have to add one more game to my 3-hour video compilations that'll be coming out soon when I do Unranked to Diamond and show one game at each level. And they're also changing a bit on how long it takes to reach your rank. Normally, I think it's around like 50 or 100 games to reach like your like pure rank. Sometimes it's a little bit faster, sometimes it's a little bit slower. It depends when you play. If you play at the end of the season, it's faster. If you play at the beginning of the season, it's a bit slower. But since there's no mid-set reset, they're like tuning it down a little bit. They're changing inactivity penalties if you're Master Plus. Normally when you're like Challenger or Master Plus, you lose like 250 LP per day if you like don't play after a while. But if you're not there, you don't really have to worry about it. But overall, they're making the system better. So now only challengers face a 250, GMs face 150, and then masters face -50 per day if you don't bank up game. But if you're playing like any bit regularly, you don't have to worry about that at all. But the new set comes out in a couple of hours for people who are like in Australia or Oceania right now. And then whenever the game normally goes live, that's when it'll be live in your region. So just keep that in mind. So for me, it's going to be tomorrow. It's going to be Tuesday. But you could essentially start climbing once it comes out. And you'll start anywhere from like iron to bronze, and then you get a bunch of provisional matches where you will get a ton of LP. So those games are obviously going to be pretty important, but if you like don't do super well in them, it's okay because like there's still like a huge climb potential. It's harder to climb at the beginning of a set because you face off against like the very best players. And that's all because the ladder reset kind of happened. So what is the new system that they're going to be bringing on? So headliners are the new like set mechanic or whatever you want to call it. They're essentially chosen from before, but with a twist. I'm hoping that it's a perfected chosen because chosen was a little annoying for me in set 4 if anyone played during that time. If you have, let me know down in the comments below. Always good to hear from longtime viewers. But essentially you're going to be able to purchase a 2-star copy of your unit from the shop, and they add one more additional trait to whatever trait that shows up in your shop, and they have unique bonuses. Normally it's like a stat increase. Sometimes they adjust their ability a little bit. Also, an improvement that they made is that headliners appear in every 4 shops, even if you do have a headliner. So you are allowed to pivot according to them. You're allowed to do so. And if you sell your headliner and roll down, there will be a new one in every single shop. So if you need to find one real quickly, that's an option too. Lastly, you also won't see the same ones that you saw before, so when you do skip over them, make sure that you're really sure about doing that. Headliners for units with less than half of their total unit copies in the pool are also not going to be offered. This differs a lot from Chosen, where you normally wouldn't pick your Chosen unit whenever you're going for a reroll comp. People figured this out late into the set, so let's say you were going for, I think it was like Tristana reroll. You actually would skip the Tristana Chosen at the start. You would just pick up regular copies of Tristana and then pick up the Chosen at the very end to 3-star everything. That happened pretty often, and it was very weird why that was a thing. But they're removing that unintuitive mechanic, which I am very happy about because it just doesn't make any sense. And you shouldn't be punished for like clicking the unit that you want, you know? Onto portals. They have a bunch of new portals. They're much less drastic than the portals from last set, but overall they are pretty simple. They mostly just like modify what type of augments there are, or sometimes you get like a neat little item or like some gold. And they did recycle like a couple of the more tame portals from the last set. So that's something to keep in mind. They also removed Legends, rest in peace. I thought Legends never died, but apparently they do. And now onto the leveling changes. This is probably like the biggest change of all because we've been playing TFT one way for the past like 4 years, and it's going to change right now. So we will be coming out with a leveling guide later, but you can reach level 10 now without like a special augment. And also they are changing the odds of like all the levels and the XP cost of a bunch of levels. So fast 7s don't really have to be like the only strategy you do now. Fast 8ing is definitely possible. Going 9 is kind of like the equivalent of going like level 8 from before, but they said that most people in like 90+% of games should be reaching level 8. I forgot the exact percentage that they used, but you should expect to be level 8 even if you're re-rolling, because after you hit your stuff, you level up, get to level 8. It's going to be pretty easy to do. However, if you want to play more for like 4 costs, rolling at 7 is not going to be that great. So maybe you have to stabilize at earlier levels, change up a bit on how you kind of level around, and hopefully it adds more diversity to like leveling strategies, because I feel like in the past sets we kind of did the same thing over and over. Even though they changed it slightly within the recent sets, you pretty much did the same thing. You just like YOLO on 4-1 and then pray, and that's going to be deciding your past 15 minutes along with your next 15 minutes on how you're going to be doing that day. Now onto shop odds. They did adjust the shop odds a little bit. So at level 7, they're adjusting the odds a bit from the PBE, as noted down here. Level 7, it used to be very heavy on 3 costs, but they're bumping it back down a bit, so now it's good for both 2 and 3 costs. Level 8, slightly better for 3 costs, but not really that much. But what's big is that 4 costs almost double, which is actually incredible, right? It was actually a little insane down here. It went from 10% to 25%, but now it's 10 to 18%, a little bit more tame, so that's kind of cool. And then, of course, level 9 and 10 are going to be where you're going to be looking for like the legendaries and things like that. Onto the next changes, we have unit pool changes. So in case you didn't know, TFT is kind of like a card game. There are a limited number of aces in the deck. That means there are a limited number of Kianas in your deck. So they're changing the odds for that. 1 cost is going to be 29 to 22, 2 costs 22 to 20, 3 costs 18 to 17, 4 costs 12 to 10, and 5 costs 10 to 9. So this sounds more complicated than it really needs to be. For 99% of players, just play how you normally were playing before. It's not going to change that much. Essentially, if you are contested, it makes it a little bit harder, but it's just TFT at the end of the day. There's only so much you can do. If you're going for a certain comp, go for it. If you want to pivot out of it, go for it. But maybe lean more towards like pivoting out. That's kind of like the TLDR, because obviously there's a lot of math involved whenever you're looking at unit pools, but that's not the video that we have for that today. Next up we have is player damage. Player damage is being adjusted a little bit too. It was a little funny. Before, there was only even amounts of damage at the start of the game. It used to be 0, 2, 4, and 6. So then you would never be at an odd number unless something goofy really happens, at least in the early game. However, they're changing that. It's apparently all odd numbers now. So I don't know why they're doing that, but they do mention it a little bit here. Essentially, the later units that die, but they're trying to make like the huge losses feel a little bit less impactful. Now onto mana regeneration. Mana regeneration gained from post-mitigation damage 7% to 5%. Again, these changes are documented, but are we really going to change the way we play just because a tank gets a little bit less mana? No, we're not. We're just going to look up what items to build on a tank and build them anyways. It doesn't really change what we're going to do. That's why sometimes patch notes are a little bit odd, because a lot of the game mechanics are kind of changed in the background. they don't really matter that much as a player, which is good, right? Like there should be someone in the back, hopefully adjusting the numbers to make the game more fun. But what are we honestly going to do with this information? Like we're still going to itemize our tanks. Like you could choose not to itemize your tanks. That's up to you. But we're just going to look up like what the best items are, or like see other players, see what they're doing, or go on bunnymuffins.lol/meta, check out what items that I'm recommending. And that's what we're going to do with those with those tank items, you know? Now on to loot. Duplicators are now less likely to show up from bonus orbs. Another thing with loot is that all the augments to give you like +1 traits or whatever, those are all removed. We'll probably get into that later. Critical strike chance is now changing how they're converting bonus crit damage. That's because there's a lot more ways to get crit now, and they don't want to give you like too much crit in the case of something like executioners. Next up we have is target dummies. They are a little bit weaker now. Interesting. I did not know that they were going to do that. Carousels can no longer contain duplicate emblems. Honestly, didn't even know that happened either. But now we're on to the large changes. Augment cycling happens every set because you don't want to get too bored of like the same augments every single time. So they're removing all natural, cybernetic leech, early education, endurance training, enshrouding stillness, hustler, lesser jeweled gauntlet, unburdened, and wandering trainer. Most of these I didn't really like that much. Wandering trainer was probably the coolest one, but they're removing all the trait augments, so you can't like keep that in there. Next up we have is the ones that are returning. We have best friends returning, clear mind, cluttered mind, cybernetic uplink, and keepers. So you could be my best friend or a keeper if you subscribe below. One thing to keep in mind there. Augments being adjusted. AFK is being nerfed a bit. Wow, they buffed this before when the PBE came out, I believe, and then now they're nerfing it back. I wonder why they're doing that. Next up we have is binary airdrop. Units will now use the champion's recommended items to pick up the airdrop item. This item cannot be the same as an item that the champ already has equipped. Oh, that's a pretty decent buff. So in case you didn't know, you could like right click on your units and they have a bunch of recommended items on the right hand side if you hover over the like unit type or whatever. Birthday present, gold per level up now to 0. Blood money, 1 gold per 3 HP loss is now being changed to 3 gold per 10 HP loss. Golden tickets being renamed to silver, golden, and prismatic ticket. Caretakers chosen. Radiant armory given is being changed from level 7 to 8 because they changed the leveling stuff before. A cut above, Deathblade kill gold damage proc chance is being reduced a bit. Cutting corners buffed a bunch. Wow, cutting corners was awful for so long. I wonder what took them so long to kind of change it. Was it always 3? I think it was always 3 for the entirety of last set. Cybernetic bulk is being buffed up a little bit. Healing orbs nerfed a bit. Hedge fund, gold being decreased across the board. Late game specialist nerfed a bunch, again, because the leveling's changing. They really hate a lot of the gold augments, so that's kind of interesting to see. Level up can now only be shown on 2-1. Thank you. Okay, now, that you know what that means? You know how we pre-level a ton in TFT, and then we're like, wait a minute, don't do that because we might get level up. Well, now it can only show up on 2-1, so that's nice. Level up initial XP is being changed from 2 to 8. Holy cow. And then bonus XP on purchase being changed from 3 to 2. That sounds like a lot worse than it was before. I haven't done the math on it, but like after 4 level ups or 4 times clicking level up, you just like lose out a ton of value. Wow, okay. It seems much worse than the one before, but I need to play with it a bit more to actually find out. Lucky gloves will now use the champion's recommended items to pick up the ideal items. Both of the thieves gloves items will be picked from a pool of 8 recommended items for lucky gloves. Okay, 2 items will now be the same. New recruit now grants a champion duplicator. That's a pretty solid buff there. Parting gifts, gold to silver. Shield is being changed from 50% to 10%. Red buff has been renamed to blistering strikes. That's a good solid name for it because, yeah, it didn't feel like the old red buff because they're a little bit different. Risky moves gold being reduced. Tiniest Titan gold per turn reduced. Too healthy, health per 2 cost increase. 3's a crowd decrease. Young, wild, and free, 1 component is being changed to 3 gold. Is Young, Wild, and Free going to be good? You should only ever take it, like, I think it's only offered in stage 2 and 3. But I think if they just limited it to 1 stage, it probably would be a lot easier to balance. But maybe they already did that and I missed the change before. Core items, these are going to be a couple of changes. Bramble Vest armor reduced, but they're changing how it works. It's now going to grant 5% max health and you take 8% reduced damage from attacks. It no longer reduces crit damage, so it's no longer kind of like a counter item like that. Blue buff no longer grants mana after takedown, so it's no longer like a permacasting type of build. Right now, blue buff seems like a little weak. Everyone's building Shojin, so that's one thing to keep in mind whenever you're comparing the 2 items. Next up, we have Deathblade. Deathblade's getting the flat AD reduced, but you're getting bonus AD in return. Dragon Claw, same thing, but with magic resist, and you get max health instead. Infinity Edge, if the holder spells can already critically strike, it gains 10% crit strike damage, so it's kind of like gets rid of that double effect, so to speak. But it probably still isn't going to be that good on units that can crit already. Guinsu's Rage Blade attack speed is being reduced, but the attack speed per stack is being increased. Jeweled Gauntlet getting the same thing as Infinity Edge. Morellonomicon, Burn and Wound, apply on ability and attack damage now. So now anyone can use it. Quicksilver getting nerfed a little bit, but to compensate, they're giving a 6% attack speed buff every 2 seconds. So it's a great attack speed item. I always like the Quicksilver plus Rage Blade combo, but maybe you don't need both of them anymore because they both kind of do the same thing. Night Harvester replaced with Steadfast Heart. That's a new item. It just reduces percentage of damage taken. Rabadon's Death Cab getting the same treatment as the other ones, but with AP instead. Rapid Fire Cannon being replaced with Red Buff, but Red Buff's being renamed, as they said, up here or something like that. I forgot where they wrote that. Oh wait, that's for the Augment. I'm completely silly. So that's just the Augment, not the actual item. Red Buff is going to be in the game. Okay, so never mind what I said about that before. Red Buff is pretty much just the new RFC. But instead of giving bonus range, it just gives a bunch of attack speed and it applies wound or like red buff to a bunch of people. Steadfast Heart, this is the new item that they're talking about. You take reduced damage. That's like the whole point of it. Warmog's gonna have a little bit less health, but you get more percent max health. And then now we're on to artifact items. So Deathfire Grass being nerfed a little bit. Diamond Hands, this one's gonna be added to the artifact pool. This one is going to give you a bit more health, and the gold per proc is going to be reduced a bit, but you should only take this if you're like lose streaking, because it's going to be hard to like actually activate it and win rounds with Diamond Hands, because the whole point is that you get the return on investment later. Gambler's Blade has been added to the artifact pool. This one's great for like stacking up gold. Gold Collector, they're kind of a bit of competitors, but Gold Collector has this execute function that's pretty nice. Goldmancer's Staff, getting a bit of mana. Hole Crusher, I like this item a lot. I'm not sure if it's that great though, but it's getting a bit more health. Mogul's Mail health is being increased a bit, and then Sniper's Focus damage increase per hex is being increased a bit. And then support items, Banshee's Veil getting a small buff. I still think this should be called the Best Friends Club. Oh yeah, be careful with aura items when you're playing Best Friends, because you can only buff up like 1 units most of the time. But now onto Radiant items. Baron's Gift, Nashor's Tooth, AS on proc is being buffed up a bit. Blue Blessing no longer grants like the same thing from before. I'm assuming for most of these they're making like the same changes that they did for the regular versions of the item, so we'll kind of skip through this. Not that important, and that's kind of all there is to this new patch compared to the PBE. So again, I'm very excited. It comes out in a couple of hours actually for all the OCE folks, but for me, I'm going to be playing it tomorrow. Probably will be streaming, either that or making videos. Definitely very excited for it, and hopefully you are as well. I'm going to be making a ton of guides coming out in the next couple of days, and hopefully throughout the set. I plan to do a lot more this set, because this is like the new era of TFT, I think, because they're getting rid of half sets. I absolutely hated half sets, and it's also the holiday season, so what else am I going to do? I have a bunch more free time because of that, but that's going to be it for me today. Definitely excited to see you all out there, and hopefully you all enjoyed this quick little rundown on like what some of the new mechanics are and a couple of things that they changed from the PBE. That's going to be it for me today. Hope to see you all tomorrow.